Hi guys and welcome back. For the ones that don't know me, my name is Marcel van den Berg and I'm a PADI Platinum course director. In this video today, I want to go over the PADI Open Water Diver manual answers of chapter number 3. I really hope that you liked it, and if you do, then please hit that like button and also don't forget to subscribe and ring that bell so you're notified for any future training videos that I upload. Alright, let's get right into question number 1. A reference can be multiple different things. One of the most common references that we like to use under the water is a descent or ascent line. Now, during your PADI Open Water Diver course, you're going to be doing dive 1 and 2. And on both of these dives, you're going to be practicing going down using a reference line. They can also call this a descent or an ascent line. Now, if a line is not available because maybe you're doing a shore dive, then the sloping bottom contour is also a reference. So the bottom becomes a reference, as then you cannot follow a line. If you're using a line to make your descent, what's really good about a line is that first of all you can hold on to it. And when you're holding on to it, it really gives you a comfortable feeling that you're more in control of your descent. Because in the beginning you might be a little bit unexperienced with adjusting your buoyancy when you're going down, so you might sometimes go down a bit too fast or you're not going down at all. And in this case, by holding onto the line, you feel like you're more in control because you can actually pull yourself down on the line or back up again if needed. That doesn't mean that you have to pull yourself all the way down to the bottom. You still need to deflate your BCD, exhale to make your lungs smaller. That's when you're descending, but holding onto the line will help a lot in control. Especially under your descent, when you might have some issues with your ears or you are not so experienced in equalizing your ears yet, holding onto the line can really help to trying to find that perfect moment for you to equalize. Another thing that really is nice about a reference line is that you instantly know which way is up and down. Especially if the dive site or the bottom is quite deep, and it doesn't mean you're going deep, you still might go to 12 meters or 18 meters, but the bottom can be a little bit more deeper. So by having that line can really help you to know which way is up and down, so to avoid further go. Another reason why we like to follow a descent line, a lot of people, is just because they feel so much more comfortable knowing where they are because they have that visual reference. Alright, the sloping bottom contour is also very handy to follow, and it's very easy as well to make your descent using a sloping bottom contour. I don't know on your first dive what you're going to be using, the line or the sloping bottom contour, but both are fantastic. Now, sometimes in real life, after you're certified and you're going to be scuba diving, you might not always have a reference. In the beginning, you can still make what we call a free descent with no reference, and you will be practicing this during your open water course as well. Just ask your instructor for more information. Alright guys, let's move on to the second question of the PADI Open Water Diver Manual answers chapter number 3. It's very important to dive in areas where there's no current or a mild current. Now, if there is a bit of a mild current, then why is it better to go against it in the beginning and then go with it halfway during the dive? Is because in the beginning of the dive, you have lots of energy, which means that it's a little bit easier to go against that mild current or to swim into that mild current. Also, you use a little bit more air when you're going against the current. But that's okay, because now we're doing that in the beginning of the dive. So half of the dive, you're going to turn around, and now the last part, going back to the boat, is much easier because now the current is behind you and it's going to help you to push you towards that boat. So it's easier to swim, you lose less energy, and you might be a little bit tired right now already because you have been diving for half of the dive time. So it's much more nicer in the end to have it easy than to have it harder and having to fight the current in the end. And that's why we always go into the current in the beginning of the dive and with the current in the end of the dive. Alright, sometimes when we're scuba diving under the water, we can get a little bit disorientated. Or you might get very distracted of a beautiful fish or any other aquatic life that you see, you're following it, and you might get a little bit lost. There might also be a little bit of a current at the same time, which might be pushing you away from the boat in this case. Alright, in the end of the dive, you go up to the surface and you realize when you get up on the surface that you're actually quite far away from the boat. And now there's a little bit of a current maybe present on the surface as well. So it's hard for you maybe to get back to the boat. So what should we do? Swimming against the current is going to be really hard. And remember, this is also the end of your dive, so it might use too much energy. So what we recommend you to do when you're on the surface and there is a current, swim across the current. So you're kind of going from left to right, parallel to the current, getting closer and closer and closer to the boat. This might take a little bit longer, but it's much more easier, uses less energy, and less likely you will get into trouble. Alright, when you get to the back of the boat, then most boats, they will have what we call a trail line or a current line, which is really cool because it's kind of like a big buoyant round ball with a line attached to it, and they throw this behind the boat. So when you get to that point, you can hold on to that line and then you can pull yourself towards the boat, and also the people on the boat can pull in the trail line as well, which makes it much more easier for you to do the last bit to get back to the boat. If it's not possible to swim across the current, then what you should do is to make sure that you're fully buoyant and that you just signal the boat for help, and then the boat will come and pick you up. And then if there's a trail line, when the boat passes, you can hold on to that. They stop, and then again, you can pull yourself in and the boat can help you to pull in the trail line as well. So there's multiple different ways to deal with a situation where a surface current is for you too strong to get back to the boat. There's so much life under you. It's absolutely incredible, especially when you visit some of these beautiful tropical reefs. It's incredible how much diversity is there. And the aquatic life is extremely delicate. Sometimes it plays a little bit of tricks on us because some of the corals, it almost looks like pieces of wood, but it's an absolute living organism, and some of it is extremely soft as well. So even by touching it slightly, you can already break off a little piece and that can die. Some of these corals are very well connected to other corals, and there's a very important balance between a lot of species. So by breaking off even a small piece of coral can affect a very large area, or even some of the fish that was relying on a little bit of coral as well. So it's very important to keep everything alive so not only you can enjoy it, but future generations as well. So especially if you're on a sandy bottom, if you don't have really good buoyancy and you're accidentally touching it or kicking into the bottom, you're going to stir up all that sand, or in some cases even mud, which is really bad. With mud, sometimes even just a slight little tap can poof, just completely put visibility down to zero. And not only can you not see anything, it might actually be a bit of a scary moment, and also you're ruining the dive site for other divers. Even in sand or mud, there can also be living lots of beautiful aquatic creatures, and you don't want to hurt or kill them as well. So in other words, please stay off the bottom to not stir it up. So we just said that we shouldn't touch it because we want to make sure that the aquatic life doesn't get injured, or you get injured as well. Some of the aquatic life is actually poisonous, so we have to be very careful touching it. Not in all cases you would know if it's poisonous, especially not if you're a beginner diver, so we have to be careful of that. Some of the aquatic life likes to hide or bury themselves into the sand, so even if you think an area is clear, there might be a little stingray just hidden under the sand, or a scorpion fish. That's why it's very important that we never ever touch the bottom. Now sometimes people know that this particular coral is 100% not poisonous, so they don't pay that much attention anymore by touching it. But even if the coral is not poisonous, it's in most cases razor sharp, so you can still get a cut. Now you're in the ocean and you get all these bacteria in there, and that can get infected very quickly afterwards as well. So never ever touch the bottom or touch any aquatic life, because we don't want to hurt ourselves, we don't want to hurt aquatic life, and we don't want to stir up the sand and create bad visibility for you or any other diver. Now, if you want to learn a little bit more about how to control your buoyancy better, then check out some of my other videos on this channel where I'm showing in detail how to get the perfect buoyancy by using your lungs and adjusting little bits of air in your BCD. So check out the video section or just go to the search bar and type in buoyancy with my channel's name. Now, you might be watching this going, anxiety, come on, why is this so scary? I even did my confined session this morning and it was so much fun, it was not scary at all. I understand, but you might get that moment a little bit later. A lot of scuba divers though, they already have anxiety, especially in the beginning of the PADI Open Water Diver course. So if you're watching this video right now and you're nervous of your first confined water dive experience, or you just did your confined water dive recently and you actually noticed that it was a little bit scary for you or while doing certain skills, then it's extremely important to understand that you're absolutely not alone and this is very normal. And it doesn't mean you always have to quit instantly because we can really overcome our fears by just doing it more often. To be honest, I didn't really like some parts of scuba diving as well in the beginning, and then I just kept going. I told my instructors, I told my dive masters, they took better care of me, they gave me some really cool tips, and I just got better and better and better to the point that I absolutely loved it, to the point that I actually now wanted to teach and help other people to overcome their fears as a PADI instructor. In other words, it is perfectly normal, but don't keep it to yourself and just push yourself through it because that might lead to a panic moment at one point. So in the end, just when you're very nervous or you have anxiety, just go up to your PADI instructor, go up to your PADI dive master or dive leader and tell them this. Have a chat before the dive and then decide if you should continue with that dive, yes or no. And sometimes the leaders might say, don't worry about it, just give it a try, I'll stay close to you, we're not going to go so deep. But if you still feel that you really don't want to do it, then don't do it. It's supposed to be fun as well. In the end, it's your own responsibility. So don't let anybody force you to do something that you don't want. If you do decide to do it, then make sure you do baby steps and make sure you stay really close to your leader and tell them at any time during the dive if you're not okay and that you want to go up or end the dive, and they will end the dive with you. Okay, so this is very important. If you had a bit of nerves and you did overcome them and you did like how your diving instructor or dive master handled it, and you're like me thinking, oh, you know what, maybe I want to teach scuba diving as well and I would like to help other people that might feel anxious also, then please check below in the description for a link how you can in contact with me and how you can join my PADI Dive Master or PADI Diving Instructor course. And then one day you can also help other people overcoming their fears and enjoy scuba diving. They're all very long questions in this PADI Open Water Diver Manual Answers of Chapter 3. Anytime that you're going to a new dive location, you should do a proper local orientation before you go scuba diving. Let's say, for example, you have done your course in location X, you've done your follow-up course in location Y, and now you are certified with 2 PADI courses, Open Water and Advanced, and now you decide to travel to location B and now do a fun dive there as a certified diver. You see some water, so you go like, oh, you know what, let's rent some dive equipment, walk off the beach and enjoy scuba diving. But now a lot of things can go wrong. Why? It's because you don't know anything about that environment. There might be very strong currents, there might be very big different tides, so it's very hard for you maybe to not only enter the water or return. There might be some aquatic life that you don't want to see or that you really want to see and it's not there. So the list goes on and on why you should never go into any water without doing a proper local orientation. And what this means is you just go to a local PADI dive center and then you're gonna have a PADI professional. They sit down with you with usually a map of the dive site with maybe one of these guys again, one of these little slates with fish, or they have maybe a fish book. And they just run you through how you should navigate through the dive site, where some really cool points of interest will be, hopefully to point out some cool aquatic life that you have a chance of seeing, and maybe some areas to avoid where there might be some strong currents or maybe some dangerous or poisonous aquatic life, maybe avoid certain caves or things like that. So a proper local orientation is really, really, really handy. Now, if you don't feel comfortable, even when you're certified to go diving with a buddy that you don't know, then we highly recommend you to sign up for a Discover Local diving experience, or we call it an organized fun dive, with a PADI dive shop, where you're going to get a PADI dive master or PADI instructor or hire that will guide you and lead you around the dive site, usually with a group of other people or maybe together just with your leader. So there's different ways for you to enjoy scuba diving. But always do a proper local orientation before you go to a new dive location. So for example, after this PADI Open Water Diver course, you're going to get a PADI Open Water Diver certification that tells you that you can dive up to a depth of 18 meters in the conditions that you have been trained for. So now you're planning to do a fun dive with another PADI Open Water Diver in a completely new location. You did do a proper orientation, and then you're going to go into the water. The water conditions are super nice. It's crystal clear, it's not too deep, there's no strong currents, and then suddenly you encounter a wreck. How cool is that? You're swimming around the wreck a little bit, and then you have a door. You go like, oh, what's inside? And you have a look inside of the wreck. And now suddenly you touch the side of the wreck, the wall, you maybe get a little cut, it hurts, you're trying to go up, but there's a ceiling, and you can see suddenly now you're in a very bad situation. And why? Is because you enter the wreck without a proper training and experience to do so. So in this case, you might go like, yeah, well, why would you go into a wreck if you don't have the training? Well, like I just said, the conditions were perfect, it's beautiful. The wreck doesn't show real danger straight away. It looks very safe, and then people decide to go in, but then because you haven't had that training, so the hazards were not obvious, you now get into trouble much quicker. So be careful with that. Another form of having hazards that are not always obvious are sometimes currents. You might get into a mild current, and the current just gets stronger and stronger and stronger, and before you know it, there might be a down current, and then if you're on a dive site, let's say a wall, and it's very deep, it might actually drag you down, which is not a very good situation to be in as well. So again, by doing a proper local orientation, you might prevent this, and also by doing proper training like drift diving, you might recognize these areas a little bit faster to prevent yourself from going there in the first place. Having a false sense of security is related to that. So let's say what I just said, you're not experienced to go into wrecks yet, but because the conditions are so nice, you're swimming in there, and the more you're swimming in that wreck and the more everything is going well, the more you think that you don't need that training and you're going to be okay until something does go wrong within the wreck, and then you don't know how to handle yourself in that emergency. And the same counts for those currents. And that's the reason why we should stick to what we have learned so far. And if you do like to go to those areas, you should do extra courses and get the proper training. Go and ask your instructor for any information how to sign up for those courses. Now, the last thing then is it can also cause anxiety if you're going to these areas that you're not properly trained for or that you don't have any experiences in. So for example, you might swim around that wreck, everything looks beautiful again on the outside, it looks beautiful on the inside, so you go like, let's go in. But the moment you're in, you realize that you're extra claustrophobic. Maybe something that you didn't really realize that much on land. Now, because of that, you might get a bit of a panic attack, and again, you're inside of a wreck. So having a panic attack in a wreck with no experience, not a good idea. So don't push yourself, but if you are interested in that kind of diving, just get the proper training and then enjoy that amazing diving that is out there. Question number 8. It's an important one as well. There's just all these reasons sometimes why we don't feel comfortable to dive in a specific location. But sometimes our bodies, they are, especially if we're diving with bodies that we don't know. And in their mind, they're paying a lot of money, they want to go to this dive, and they're like, what? If you can't dive in those conditions, you shouldn't be a diver, so they're putting a lot of pressure on you as well. But again, everybody has been trained in different conditions, and that person might have been trained in those conditions and you haven't, so you might feel uncomfortable. Or even if you have, you feel uncomfortable. I mean, if you don't like to go in a high surf, are you not supposed to get certified now? Of course, you can still find locations where you don't have a high surf and still enjoy scuba diving. So just politely say, I'm really sorry, dude, but I don't feel, comfortable going in there. Can we just go to another location? And if your body doesn't like that, if your body goes like, well, no, you shouldn't do that, then that's it. Bye-bye, buddy, and never dive with that person again. There is a little bit of ego sometimes in this dive industry. Don't let it intimidate you. Trust me on this one. There is a lot of people that are brave, I think, enough to say, I'm sorry, I'm not ready for something, I want to do something a little bit more easier. And what I think is very cool on a personal level is that some of the best diving instructors in the world, the most experienced cave divers sometimes, or technical divers sometimes, a lot of people, they look up to them and they go like, oh, these guys, they've done it all. But these are actually the guys that always say, hey, if anybody in the team is not comfortable to do something, we just cancel the dive and there's always another dive, or we can move to another location. So don't think to be part of the big guys means that you have to force yourself to do something. The people that force you to do something you don't want are not big guys, I can tell you, and they shouldn't be in this dive industry at all. So first of all, to prevent any stings, any cuts, or any abrasions is to just make sure you have really good buoyancy, never ever touch anything on the water, and you will never get injured. It's that simple. Now, if you do have to kneel or sit or stand on a bottom that we don't recommend, but maybe because, for example, you overexerted and it's just extremely important for you that you do that, then just make sure that it is a true sandy bottom so that not only you can not hurt yourself, but you also don't hurt any of the aquatic life that might be there. Now, to prevent this in general is try to hold on to your body anytime you're overexerted, and then you don't have to touch anything at all. Now, if you do accidentally touch aquatic life and you do get a small cut, or you might get a sting, you might get stung by something a little bit poisonous, but it's not too bad yet, then you can apply first aid when you get back to the boat. And there's different methods of first aids depending on the aquatic life that touched or stung you or cut you in this case. You learn a lot more about that in your PADI Rescue Diver course, which is such a cool course, very fun, super rewarding. Check with your instructor if you like to do your PADI Rescue Diver course. But for now, it's important to know that we can do a lot of first aid if something does happen in the unlikely event. Now, anytime you do get caught or stung by aquatic life and you do first aid, it is important that when you get back that you do go to a dive doctor or any physician and just double check and do a proper medical checkup just to make sure that you're okay to go for your other dive. If it is more serious, so you got, for example, stung by a much more poisonous aquatic animal, then it's very important to do the right procedures by getting back to the boat. In some cases, maybe doing CPR and then alert EMS and get the evacuation going. So besides touching it, another way to prevent not being injured by aquatic life is to not annoy it. And treat all organisms with respect. I have seen some people, some instructors, some dive leaders trying to get a triggerfish to get more excited, and they poke like fins in their face. Would you like it if you get a fin in your face? Of course not. So these animals, they get aggressive and they start attacking the person that is doing that to them. If you pick up stuff, then of course you're just going to risk one of those aquatic life organisms to just turn around and go, hey dude, you're picking me up, and they do something bad to you. I mean, I've literally seen some of my students with their arms in holes going, oh, what's in there? You know, think about it. Let's say you're sitting on your couch watching Netflix and then suddenly this giant hand comes into the window and starts poking around. I mean, what would you do, right? You probably bite that finger as well. In other words, it's very important. Don't touch, don't stick your hand into things you don't know what's in there, and don't start harassing aquatic life because it's just going to turn around. And what is very sad is that sometimes people go, yeah, but I know this turtle's never going to bite me, and they're holding the shield. Hey, how would you feel if somebody jumped on top of you? It's not nice in general to disturb any of those beautiful organisms. So don't touch, just watch. And then we got some people that say, well, if I wear a proper exposure suit, then it's okay to touch things, like for example gloves. No, it's not, because again, you can hurt the aquatic life, and some of these things can go right through your wetsuit. I do have to admit though, is that an exposure suit does prevent you from having certain cuts and stings. So if you accidentally touch something with an exposure suit, it's definitely better than without an exposure suit. But wearing an exposure suit, or especially gloves, is not a free ticket for you to start touching things. Important. All right, question number 10. Yeah, so first thing you do when you get to the surface always is to fully inflate your BCD, and then you hear the air escaping from your jacket, then you know it's fully inflated. Once you're fully buoyant, then swim perpendicular, either way, until you get to an area where the current is less strong, and then try to swim back to shore. In a lot of cases, the rip current is very strong and it's hard to get out. In this case, start signaling for help, like this, or with one hand, like this. Inflate your SMB, which is a big long balloon that we carry with us. It looks like this when it's rolled up, but when you unroll it, it's a big long balloon. And then you can move that around as well on the surface to show to people that you are in trouble, and they will come and pick you up. To be honest, you shouldn't really be in a rip current in the first place, as they can be that dangerous. So again, do always a proper local orientation before you go to a dive area, and then probably people will tell you to avoid a certain area because there's rip currents. However, in the unlikely event, it can always happen without all the preparation that you've done, and in this case, do the technique that I just told you. So tides are caused by the attraction of the moon and the sun. And because they are moving around, tides also change depending on the time of the day. In some areas, they hardly change, so nobody really cares about it. Or they might change a little bit depending on certain times, and then we can sort of plan our dives around those times. But in some areas, the tides are extremely big and have huge changes, which not only makes it hard to maybe get into the water whenever you want, but even worse, trying to get out of the water in the end of the dive. And a lot of us have come in these situations that, for example, in tropical areas, if the tide becomes so low, then you find yourself almost getting stuck with the reef, and we don't want to damage the reef, we don't want to hurt ourselves. So you're on the surface and you just can't get back to shore. So timing is very important when you go scuba diving in an area with big tide changes. And to know these times, again, just do a local orientation before the dive, and the professionals there will tell you exactly when it is safe for you to go scuba diving in that particular area. Yes, we like to call this a dive roster. When you book a scuba diving experience on a boat, then on the boat they have this big roster hanging like a whiteboard somewhere on the boat, and they have it on a piece of paper, on a clipboard, And there's different techniques of how to manage this roster, but a common one is that they get all the fun divers, basically all the divers on the boat together, and they will give this roster to each and every one of them, and then they have to fill in some details like their names, who they're going to be diving with, their time in, their time out, how much air they have in the tank, how much lead weight they're having. So there's lots of information on this roster, and when they come back, then they fill in again a checklist that they came back, how much air they had left, where they went on the dive, all that kind of stuff, and that helps the dive master or the boat master to make sure that everybody came back. Same with the whiteboard. There's different ways of doing it, and people literally tick off their names when they come back on the boat. It's extremely rare for a dive organization to leave people on the dive site, and in those few cases that it did happen, usually it was with mismanagement of the dive roster or the role, so it's extremely important that we use it. If you dive with an organization that is not using this, then I highly recommend to not go scuba diving with them. Question number 13, and we are now halfway through the PADI Open Water Diver Manual Answers of chapter number 3. This is also the largest chapter of all the 5 chapters, so I'm happy that you're still here, and hopefully you're liking it, you're learning something, and if you do, please smash that like button. That will help me a lot. And if you have any questions so far, you can leave them in the comments below, and I will check every single comment and I will answer every single one of them. Alright, for now, let's have a go with question 13. In the dive industry, there's actually discussions from people going, the best entry is a giant strike. No, it's not. The best entry is a backwards roll. The best entry is going in the water with no equipment. And I always go like, why are all these guys having these discussions, as there is no standard for the best entry? It is basically the easiest one, the most comfortable one, and the most safest one for the water conditions that you're going to be scuba diving in. Not just water conditions, to be honest, also your personal preferences as well. So for example, if you're diving from a large boat, then a giant strike can be really handy and nice to go into the water. It's very safe, it's very controlled, and a lot of people love this entry. But you might feel a bit uncomfortable doing this, big step from that height. Then you might go, oh, should I now go backwards? No, you can't, because it's too high. So now what you can do, you can literally go maybe from the back of the boat, use the ladder to go into the water, and then they will hand you your diving equipment from the boat, and then in the water you're putting it on. So you just have to sometimes adjust to the situation that you're in. When you're diving from a very small boat, let's say a dinghy or maybe a longtail boat, then it's hard to do a giant strike. So in this case, a backward roll is a really good entry. It's actually really fun to do it as well. I really like it. Some people, they don't like it so much. So again, just go into the water. They give you your equipment, you put it on into the water. So again, there's different situations. Maybe it's a little bit choppy, and then a certain entry might be better than another entry as well. When you're scuba diving and you notice the bottom of a boat and the propeller in the back and it's spinning, it's almost instantly reaction to stay away from that. But if it's not moving around, then it gives that false sense of security. And we do sometimes see people getting very close to propellers of boats, thinking that they won't start a boat because people assume that they're scuba divers under the water. But I have seen over and over again that captains do suddenly start their engines, and then the propellers, they start moving, and this can cause serious injuries. So whenever you see the bottom of a boat, always stay far away from it, especially the propeller, and even if the propeller is not moving, make sure you have a big distance just in case it starts to move. What this line does is that if there's a bit of a surface current in the beginning, then if you go against it and it's too strong, you're going to lose lots and lots and lots of energy. When you get to the starting point and the mooring line and you're trying to descend, you're now already might be exhausted, you might lose a lot of air in your descent, or you might feel very uncomfortable. So having that line on the side of the boat, you can easily use that to pull yourself to the front of the boat, to the mooring line or descent line, and then continue your dive. An extra tip is whatever you choose to do before you descend, always catch your breath. Take a couple of really nice long deep breaths in. Make sure you feel really calm and then signal to your bodies it's okay to go down, and then start your 5-point descent. This is very unlikely, but you might get lost on the dive site. You might have been following aquatic life, not realizing that you got far away from the dive site. There might have been a current. There is a few reasons to end up on the surface too far away from the boat, or no boat in sight at all, or not even ashore, so you're kind of in open water. I know this feels a little bit uncomfortable if this happens to you for the first time, but just remember that you have this BCD, which is an amazing jacket that you can fully inflate with air, so you're extremely buoyant. Then stay close to your buddy, so you're together, or with your buddies if you're with a group, and then use your signaling devices to get the attention from the people that are looking for you. One of the signaling devices you can use is a DSNB. Now here I got one, and this is like a balloon that we carry with us, clipped onto our BCD anywhere, or maybe in our pockets, and you can unroll it so it becomes a long thin tube. You can inflate that, and on the surface you can move it around so people can see this from a big distance. You can check it on one of the videos that I'm putting on the screen right now, how that works. Another thing that you can use is maybe your whistle. So when you're buying a brand new BCD, it usually comes with a whistle, and if not, then you can purchase a whistle. It's very cheap. These whistles are very handy on the surface to make a very loud noise for anyone that is looking for you. You can even extend on that and get one of those flashlights that you can attach to your BCD, so you have a super bright light flashing. And there's even a couple of other devices that you can use as well. Most people, they use a DSNB and a whistle, but if you want to have more signaling devices, then go to your local retail shop or ask your instructor for the options for you to purchase. So during this PADI Open Water Diver course, you're learning to avoid some situations to not get injured in the first place. And if you do get into any problems, then how to handle those problems, and afterwards how to deal with the situation in an emergency. However, if you want to get even better in preventing and handling these situations or potential emergencies under the water, then I highly recommend, I can't say it enough, take your PADI Rescue Diver course. You can't go there straight from your Open Water Diver course, but you can do your PADI Advanced course after your PADI Open Water Diver course, and then you can continue with your PADI Rescue Diver course. If you're not sure if you really want to do this PADI Rescue Diver course, then ask your instructor if he can give you an introduction to the PADI Rescue Diver course in the PADI Advanced course. Then again, I say it's a no-brainer, because not only is the PADI Rescue Diver course a lot of fun, but it's extremely rewarding, knowing after you're certified that you're much more capable handling these emergency situations and other people around you, especially when you're scuba diving a lot. So now you can add on to that with your PADI Emergency Oxygen Provider course, which goes into depth in how to give people 100% oxygen in case of maybe a lung overexpansion injury or decompression illness. And then finally, you got the EFR course, or the Emergency First Response Primary and Secondary Care. And this course is not just good as a scuba diver, but you can use this for any emergency on land as well. So it's a fantastic course, and most people actually get this combined with the PADI Rescue Diver course. So if you're interested in any of these 3 courses, go and check with your instructor and he will give you a lot of information how you can sign up for it. Anytime you reach the surface, problem or not, the first thing that you do, keep your rag in, keep your mask on, and fully inflate that BCD until the air escapes from your exhaust valves. You're like a balloon, you cannot go anywhere. It's absolutely fantastic. It calms you down, you can rest, and it's much more easier for other people to help you too. But definitely if you're in trouble or in an emergency, so at least you want to make sure that you fully inflate your BCD so you can't sink back down anymore. Now another way to increase positive buoyancy at the surface is to drop your weight system. If you have a weight belt, just unbuckle it and drop it. And if you have integrated weights, use the quick release mechanism on the side, pull them out and then drop it next to you. Now together with being fully inflated, you're extremely buoyant, which will make handling any problems at the surface much more easier. What's happening is that you're encountering a panic diver at the surface, and this person is usually out of control. They don't listen and react to any of your questions or commands. They usually are moving very fast on the surface in a panic mode. Their mask is usually completely off or it's half hanging on their head because they don't like anything on their face, so they just get that off straight away. They don't usually inflate their BCD that well, so with their weights on, they're very negatively buoyant, so it's hard for them to stay on the surface, so they keep kicking and kicking and kicking, and that wears them out as well. And they're just in panic, so their eyes are usually very wide, and they're just not listening to anything that you're saying. So what's the most important thing right now to do is to get them buoyant. Now, to get them buoyant, there's different ways of doing that. You can do an around approach or an on the water approach. And then what you do, you can grab them, you can fully inflate them, make sure you're still fully inflated yourself, and then help them to release their weight system. And once they get more buoyant, in most cases, they calm down significantly, and then you can communicate with them. If you want to learn more about how to handle this situation, you're definitely going to practice this a lot during your PADI Diver Rescue course. It's extremely rare and it might never happen to you, and hopefully it will never happen to you, but you might be scuba diving under the water and you might encounter an unresponsive other diver under the water. How should you handle the situation? So first of all, what you want to do is to make sure that the diver is truly unresponsive and is not just very quietly looking at some fish or at some coral. So you give him a little shake, and then if you know for sure that that person is not responsive, then make sure that you lift up their airway, keep their regulator in their mouth if they still have it in their mouth, and then use their BCD and your own if needed to control the buoyancy by inflating it a little bit, maybe deflating it if needed, but to get the buoyancy going and then do a controlled and slow ascent to the surface with that person. Again, this is a skill that you're learning in your PADI Rescue Diver course, and it's the PADI Rescue Diver exercise number 6. If you want to learn more about this skill, you can check the video section and go for the PADI Rescue Diver skills, and then go for number 6, where in detail I'll show you how to perform this skill correctly. Now, once you get to the surface, make sure you fully inflate the victim, fully inflate yourself, remove the weight system from the victim, from yourself, remove the mask from the victim again and from yourself. Then you can open up the airway and do a check to make sure that the victim is breathing. And if they're not breathing, signal the boat for help, update them that you have an unresponsive, no breathing diver, and then start providing rescue breaths while towing the person back to the boat. At the boat, you perform CPR, alert EMS, and then once EMS arrives, they take over from you. You can see that if you have been watching the PADI Open Water Manual answers of chapter 1 and 2, that this question just keeps coming back. It is such an important question, as if you can prevent the situation from happening or know how to handle it the right way, you can solve many other problems down. So again, you're scuba diving, you might end up in a current that's too strong. Now you might use too much energy. It's very stressed, or maybe it gets very cold, or you're getting lost, or the visibility is not so nice, or whatever the reason is. You're just using more and more energy, so you're breathing more and more, and you start breathing very shallow. Remember that airspace that we have, so the shallower we breathe, the more it becomes uncontrollable, to the point you just think that you're not getting any air anymore, and then you start to panic, and then you might want to bolt. To prevent this, to make sure that we always dive relaxed, never find yourself in a stressful situation, and if you do and you feel that you start to breathe like that, just stop straight away, maybe hold onto your body and rest and catch your breath. Slow, long, deep breaths in and out will calm you down quite quickly. Once you calm down, you can decide to continue your dive, or maybe just say, let's cancel this and let's go up and just do another dive. Question number 22 of this PADI Open Water Diver manual answers chapter number 3. It is the call first approach. The reason why is because then emergency services will go on their way, and in the time it takes them to get to you, then you can still help the victim with more CPR or any other first aid that might be required. In the end, they need to get to a proper physician as fast as possible, as they can truly help them. Our role is to provide any primary or secondary care until EMS arrives. Another great thing about contacting EMS as fast as possible is that they can give us advice what to do on the phone or any other way that you are in contact with them. Especially these days, we all have smartphones. There's a video function on it, so we can even show them on video what is happening. So whatever you do, make sure you contact them first after you check for breathing and provided any CPR as needed. Alright guys, I hope that you're liking it so far, and don't forget to smash that like button if you do. It helps me a lot. But also you can actually click on the join button below this video, and then you can become a member of this channel, and you can get some really cool perks in return for a small donation to this channel, which will help me to produce more content for you. So that will be the biggest thank you can ever give me. So have a look by clicking the join button under this video. Alright, we're almost there, and we almost finished this PADI Open Water Diver manual answers of chapter number 3. So let's have a look at question number 23. Running out of air should never happen to you. It is extremely rare, and I have met thousands, tens of thousands of divers around the world, and almost no one has ever run out of air. It's extremely rare to run out of air if you're following all the proper rules and procedures that you are learning in the PADI courses. On us, we have what we call an SPG, or submergible pressure gauge. And what it is basically an air gauge that tells us with a needle how much air do we have left in our scuba cylinder. On most of these gauges, when you reach 50 bar, which is still in most cases a quarter of the air in a scuba cylinder, it is time for people to go up. Now, when I teach scuba diving, I actually teach my students to already start going up at around 70 bar, which means that when they reach the surface, they have lots and lots of spare air left. Sometimes, in very rare occasions, this might go wrong. Maybe because the SPG is broken. Maybe because you didn't do a good body check. Maybe the tank hasn't been filled up to the max. Maybe you're diving with a dive organization that doesn't switch tanks in between the dives. Maybe you are under the water and there was a strong current, or you were very excited, or you were just so busy with your camera that you forgot to watch your SPG. So there's a lot of reasons why in the unlikely event someone can run out of air. Now, normally if you run out of air, your body is right next to you, so you can just tap your body, take his or her alternate air source, and then make a very safe and controlled ascent to the surface. But if in this case your body is too far away from you, it says here 12 meters away, and you're not too deep, so up to a depth in this case of 10 meters, then you can still make a controlled ascent to the surface by doing the CESA or the controlled emergency swimming ascent. What you do, you take your final breath from your regulator, make sure that you're in ascent position, and then start to swim up slowly, not faster than 80 meters per minute, while making a continuous sound. The ah sound works really well. Ah, so like this. Ah, slowly swimming to the surface. Now, why it's important to make that sound is because if we run out of air, then remember you can never ever hold your breath under the water. Otherwise, your area lungs will expand to the point you might hurt your lungs. So by exhaling, now we're actually releasing that expanding air from our lungs to prevent any injuries. Now, why do we make a ah sound or any sound or not just blow out? That's because when you make a sound, it's much more easier to control it, as we're trying to do it as gently as possible to make sure that we reach that surface. So when we reach the surface with the CESA, keep swimming strongly to stay on the surface. Keep your mask on, take your regulator out. We can't use the button right now to automatically inflate the BCD because there's no air. So manually or orally inflate that BCD. While kicking your legs until it's fully inflated. If you need to afterwards, you can still drop your weight system, and if it's not needed, you can keep it on. So like I said, we're not dive physicians, so it's very important that anything that has happened, especially when you're in doubt, that you always check yourself up with a proper physician or dive physician just before you plan another scuba dive. An example of this, for example, is when somebody had a near drowning experience and they swallowed a lot of water, and then the water did came out when they got to the surface thinking that they're okay, but there might still be a little bit of water left in the lungs, and that can damage the lungs over time. So it's really important to go to a physician, and they will do a proper checkup of your lungs, making sure that all the water is clear and there's no damage up to that point. In other words, always check with a physician first. Now, in the previous questions, we already discussed the signaling devices. First, you should have a DSMB balloon that you can inflate under the water when you're shallow with a rope to the surface, letting boats know that you're very shallow, or at the surface in case you might need to get the attention of the boat or shore that you might need some help. Another signaling device was that whistle to get people's attention on the surface, or what you can maybe use is like a big strobe, like a big light, or an air horn, or any other signaling device that you might like to add onto your diving equipment. Last question, number 26. A dive flag is a flag that is usually attached to a balloon or a big buoy at the surface, letting other boats know from a distance that there's divers under the water or shallow to the water. This buoy is now attached to a line that you attached on the surface. Now, a lot of captains are very well trained and they avoid these dive flags, but there are different reasons why a captain might not see or recognize your dive flag. So never assume that when you have your dive flag up that everything is safe. Definitely always try to listen under the water, and if you hear a boat engine, and especially when it's coming closer, then don't take any chances and just stay deep enough until that boat passes again, and now you can continue your ascent and going back up to the surface. It happened to me a few times, and the boat captain was just distracted, and he passed like a meter away from my dive flag. So I really realized on the water, these things can really happen. So again, safety is also your responsibility. So make sure you stay deep enough until the boat passes. So guys, well done on completing your PADI Open Water Diver manual answers of chapter number 3. This was the longest chapter of your PADI Open Water Diver course. So give yourself a little pat on the shoulder. Again, I hope that you really liked it. So give me a big thumbs up under this video. And please share this video on your social media, as it might help other people to prepare for their PADI Open Water Diver course. Alright, as you can see, there's already chapter number 4 popping up in the screen right now. So maybe take a small break, get yourself another cup of coffee, and dive right into the PADI Open Water Diver manual answers of chapter number 4.